Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is FPL Elma, and today we're going to be going through the transfer tips for Game Week 10, and that includes players to buy, players to sell, players to avoid, and players to keep as well. And before we get into it, I'd like to thank you all guys for the continued support on the channel. I think you're 10 away from 850 subscribers. So you know that subscribed, make sure you subscribe, make sure you leave a like, and make sure you hit that bell so you don't miss any content going up on the channel. And also, wasting any much time, let's get straight into it. So first, we're going to go through the players to keep ahead of Game Week 10. And the first player I've gone for there is Joao Pedro. I think I've seen a lot of people are selling Joao Pedro, and I completely understand why you're selling him. He's been blanking for a while. I think it's been 5 games with a blank, but I still think the fixtures coming up for Chelsea are very, very hard fixtures to avoid. They play Wolves, who have just finished watching their game. They managed to win 4-2, and they're going to be playing Burnley as well in game week 12. Of course, the game week 10 fixture a little bit tricky in Spurs, but Spurs have just lost to Newcastle 2-0. So I still think, for me, personally, I'm going to be keeping him, but I understand if you're going to sell him. But my advice will be keep him and focus on other transfers elsewhere because I think Chelsea have very good fixtures coming up. And then the next player is Victor Gyökeres. I've also seen a lot of people are selling Gyökeres at the moment, and of course, as the same as Joe Pedro, very very understandable. But if it was a Gyökeres owner, I'd keep because they have very good fixtures in game week 10 and game week 11. They play Burnley and Sunderland. I think those are two fixtures where I'd expect Gyökeres to perform in those fixtures, and I'm sure he's going to perform in one of the fixtures, if not both the fixtures. But I think for the price tag, I understand why people are selling, but I definitely keep him. And then the next player to keep is Cody Gakpo. I know Liverpool are not in a good run of form. They've also just lost today to Crystal Palace in the Carabao Cup. But I still think if I was a Gakpo owner, I think I'd still keep him because he has been the best player for Liverpool this season. At only 7.6 million, I think it's a decent price tag as well. They have Villa coming up next, and to be fair, Villa have been looking very, very sharp and they'd want to bounce back after beating Man City during the weekend in game week 9. So it's going to be a tough fixture for Liverpool, but if it's someone I expect to perform in that game, it's going to be Gakpo. And as well, Gakpo and Liverpool, just in general, have good fixtures coming up after game week 11. They're playing Villa and City in game week 11 and 12. I mean 10 and 11, sorry. But then after game week 11, they have Forest, West Ham, and Sunderland. Those are fixtures I'd definitely be looking at having a Liverpool player. And so if I owned Gakpo until now, I think it's worth just holding on and waiting for those turn of fixtures because everyone will be jumping on the Liverpool train very, very soon. So those are the three players I'd definitely keep. And so let me know down in the comments what do you think about the players. Now let's look at the players to buy ahead of game week 10. So the first player I've gone as the player to buy ahead of game week 10 is John Philip Mateta at only 7.5 million. Not the best start to the season, but I think it goes down to the fixture overload that Crystal Palace are experiencing. He didn't start today against, was it Liverpool, but he still came off the bench and had a decent performance. But at that moment in time, I think the game was already done and no one wanted to lose the game. So I think it was a little bit tricky for him to perform. But with the fixtures coming up in Brentford, Brighton, Wolves, and Burnley in their next 5 games, and they're going to play United, I think, somewhere there in the middle, which I think is, for them, maybe it's a relatively easy fixture. But with that type of game, you don't know. So that's why I've just chosen to go for Brentford, Brighton, Wolves, and Burnley. I think those are very decent games. And I think if you are looking to replace João Pedro, I think Mateta is the perfect solution for that striking position. And nobody is going to be able to perform and turn his season around to be the similar to the one that he had last season. So this is the first player. Now let's look at the second player. The next player I've gone as buy ahead of game week 10 is Krupi Jr. I think at 4.6 million in that forward position, you can't go wrong with a 4.6 million player. I think he's a very cheap player. He's a very cheap beast. He's been performing really, really well. I think with the back-to-back goals as well in the previous fixtures. And I think he's a very good enabler. Of course, not a They have a very tough fixture in Man City, but even today, Swansea managed to score against Man City, and Bournemouth have been flying. I think they're second in the table or third. And Krupi has been very, very good and instrumental in some of the wins this season so far. So if you're looking for an enabler and a cheap player, and you want someone who can perform week in, week out, I think Krupi is your guy. The only concern is when Evan Nelson is back, is he still going to play? In my own opinion, I think he's still going to be able to play because he's cemented that position and he's also outperformed Evan Nilsson, who has played for a longer period this season. So I think it's definitely one to watch out for. If you're not going to buy, but if you want an enabler, I think Krupe Jr. is your guy. And then the next player I've gone to as a buy ahead of game week 10, I think is Brian Mbuemo at 8.2 million, playing Forest in game week 10, who have been very poor defensively, by the way. So he's managed to score 4 goals in the last 3 games for United in this month or in the previous fixtures. So I think he's also a very decent option. If you want a Manchester United player, I advise to go for Brian Mbuemo and not Bruno Fernandes. I think that Brian Mbuemo just offers a little bit more compared to Bruno, and of course he's on the cheaper side by I think zero point 0.8 million. So I think Brian Mbuemo is a decent option. Very good fixtures coming up as well in Forest, Spurs, and Everton in the next three. So if you want a United take a risk on a United player, I definitely be looking at Brian Mbuemo. So those are the players to buy. Now let's look at the players to avoid. So the first player I've gone for as a player to avoid ahead of game week 10 is Mickey van den Veen. I just don't think he is worth it at this moment in time. At 4.7 million, Chelsea up next. I think the only reason people are buying him because he scored 23 points against Everton, scoring from 2 corners, DEFCON point, and a clean sheet against Everton. But I still think he's a high risk because of those fixtures they have. They have Chelsea, United, Arsenal, and Newcastle in their next 5 very tough fixtures to keep a clean sheet. Of course, very capable of getting an attacking return, but how many times is he going to score a headed goal? They lost today to Newcastle, or depending on the time you're watching this, they lost to Newcastle 2-0. It just shows that they're very suspectable when it comes to keeping clean sheets, and that's why I think I'd avoid Mickey van de Ven at this moment in time. And then the next player to avoid for me is going to be Igor Thiago. And the main reason for that is because they have very tough fixtures coming up in game week 10 and game week 11. Maybe after that, if you want a cheap player, I think you can go for him. But I think Welbeck is at a somewhat similar price tag to Igor Thiago, and definitely I'd want Welbeck over him. And so, yeah, but I think it's just a consideration. But for me, I'd definitely avoid Igor Thiago just because of the fixtures in game week 10 and 11 and go for him after that. He's been very good, very decent for Brentford this season. He's on penalties as well, looking very good from set pieces, like he can score some few goals. So I think it's worth the punt, maybe, but after game week 11. So that's another player to avoid. Now let's look at the last one. The next player and final player I've gone for, one of the players to avoid ahead of game week 10 is Mark Gui. I think he's just a rotation risk. You can see in my reasoning I put the lap is back, but the lap just picked a red card. So I think Mark Gui is going to be playing in that fixture, but you all know after game week 10 he's going to go back to the lap. That's why I've gone for avoid Mark Gui at all costs, unless you want an enabler at 4.2 million. But I still think Krupi is a better option compared to McGui. I think Chelsea should have just let him stay at Sunderland and maybe he'd be the starting player. The Sunderland have been very good this season, and McGui, I'm sure, will have been instrumental in that. But now they're going to waste his career this season and let him sit on the bench because they have so many attacking options. But hey, that's how Chelsea want to operate, how they're going to operate. That's another player to avoid. Now let's look at the players to sell ahead of game 10. So the first player I've gone for as a player to sell ahead of game week 10 is Virgil van Dijk. I mean, Liverpool have been very poor defensively. No clean sheet in their last 10 games in all competitions. And the price tag of 6 million is not even chipping in with goals and assists, but he's doing that in the Champions League, but not in the Prem. So I think if I had Van Dijk, I'd sell immediately. 6 million is too expensive for a defender who does not give you any points, and you can just go for cheaper options like Trufe at 4.5 million, Senesi at 5 million, there's Trippier and Poro at 5.5 million. And if you want a premium 6 million, you can just go for Kukurea, who's a very, very decent option as well, but Chelsea will be looking shaky defensively. Maybe not him, maybe Aït-Nouri on his back or something like that, but I still think 6 million is too expensive for a Liverpool team that do not keep any clean sheets. And then the next player I've gone as a sell ahead of Gameweek 10 is Tijani Reinders. I think he's only 5.6 million, so he's a little bit cheap, but I think the high chances of rotation is there at this moment in time. Since many Man City players are coming back, like the game against Swansea, Cheki had some few minutes as well. Mamouche had some few minutes, and I think if Reinders is going to be playing, he's going to be playing a little bit deeper compared to where he was the first three game weeks. So for me, I think it's a definite sell uh, ahead of game week 10. And if you want to keep him, fair enough. But I still think there are decent options at that 5.6 to 6 million price range. The likes of Minte from Brighton, Caicedo from Chelsea. If you want a Liverpool player, you can go for Gravenberch. But I'd strongly advise not to get Gravenberch. Just keep Reinders. You can go down lower. You can go for Starch from Leeds, who has been very, very good. Or you can go from long stuff who's on set pieces as well. But for now, I think for me, I think it's a must sell for Rangers. And then the last player in my list for players to sell is Mohamed Kudus, and it's just the same reasoning as Van den Veen. I think very, very tough fixtures coming up for Spurs, Chelsea, United, Arsenal, and Newcastle in their next five at 6.8 million. I think they're very, very decent options around that price range. So for me, it's a definitely sell for Mohamed Kudus, and we bring him back after the Newcastle game. So this is another long, long video. Let me know if you like this type of content or this style of content apart from the traditional team selection every week. Just something else I'm trying to do. So let me know down in the comments whether you like it or you just want me to keep it to this type of content for shorts or maybe transition to shorts and long videos as well. So as I mentioned, it's another long video. If you've managed to reach this far, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and also tell me which players are going to sell, keep, avoid, and all those stuff. And with that, I'd like to thank you all guys for watching, and I'll see you all guys later. Bye bye.